Okay, yay! So good to see everybody. Yay! Hi. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to just kind of start here for a second and kind of set the scene. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Maya Gonzalez. I'm an author, artist, and educator. I work with, hey Cynthia, I work in art. I primarily consider myself an artist first. And I accidentally started making children's books, and it's a really, really awesome fit for me. And I really found it to be a spiritual practice, a personal practice, and a really radical political practice. And so that's why I'm really excited to be sharing this conversation with you guys. And I have lots of ideas and opinions, but I also am really curious to hear what other people have to say. And I have a kind of a shape to our talk tonight. But if you guys know me, then you know I'm also really open to kind of where things go. So please feel very, very free to ask questions, to share comments, to share wisdom. And when you talk, please feel free to introduce yourself a little bit, just so we get a sense of where you're coming from and opening up our ears to hear you better. All right, so I'm going to begin with this next piece, and I'm going to go away. Yay. So let's go here. Let's begin here. These are two images that I have been sharing and a lot of people have been sharing, and I think it's great that we're starting to have this conversation about the statistics, really, in children's books. And we're going to come back to these again. So let's just take a really quick look, those of you who aren't really familiar with this. The statistics for children's books by and for people of color have remained frozen at this really almost nonsensical level for like 18 years, my whole career. and so that's what we're looking at. We're going to look at sort of multicultural and what we're doing, what people are doing, and kind of have that conversation about how things are working and maybe what's missing and where we can go. And so let's start here. Now, is there anyone that would like to share anything at this point? Just like bringing in and defining, like, I will say briefly, like multicultural children's lit, I'm talking about like different ethnicities, different cultures that people bring, which for me include LGBTQI, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex. There's a very distinct culture in the queer community, and so also bring that in. Ironically, it was not possible for me to find statistics on children's books in that arena. They're that sparse, actually. So we're going to focus on people of color in terms of looking at numbers, and then we're going to imply and include LGBTQI. Okay, so just right off the bat, I want to check in. Does anyone want to share anything at this point? Feel free to raise your hand and, excuse me, we'll have a listen. Okay, Laura.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Oh my God, this is like magic. No, I was just going to add or question whether we should add representation of disabled people to the list.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, I think that's a really good thing to bring up because I actually also include elders and people who just think outside of the box. I think there are a number of cultures within our community, people that aren't represented that I also want to call in. So thank you so much. And welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Let me see, I'm going to check and see if there's anybody else with their hand raised. Laura, I'm going to mute you. Okay. So this is the reality that we're dealing with, and I just wanted to kind of, there's Sky. Hi, Sky. Jackie wants to talk. Thank you. Okay, let me find you, Jackie. Okay, Jackie, can we hear you? I think you're unmuted. Oh, unmuted. There.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, you sound really super faint. Can you talk up? Let's see if we can hear you better. Hi, Jackie, by the way.
How are you? One of the biggest problems I find is that editors have an idea of what diversity looks like. I think they're looking at it from the physical perspective. The skin color, versus the culture of it. And when I say the culture, it's more than just the look black. But when we're looking at diversity, people of color, we pass an apartment building mix, especially when you live in Brooklyn. I wrote a middle grade, and it was an interesting concept, and I had two lit agents. One actually asked me to revise it and resubmit. It said to her that
Jackie, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Jackie, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm missing so much of what you're saying, and it sounds so interesting. I'm wondering if there's any way where we can, if you can come closer, or if there's a way to make you louder in some way. I don't know if other people are.
If not, keep talking, and I'll just type it.
I can hear. Okay, it sounds like other people can hear you, so I'm just going to listen really close. I'm so sorry.
Okay. The point I was making is that it's more than that. An editor made the statement that the voice of the character doesn't sound like a 9-year-old. It sounds too old. And then my response to him was, if it lived in the hood, it would be the voice of a 6-year-old. Because when children are raising their siblings or they're being grown up in that household, having a 17 or 14 years old, they tend to grow faster. So their voice is not the voice of and I just think misconception of what they think it ought to look like. And even when you write these stories, then they want to mix it for what it is, or this is awesome writing. The writing is okay. That's the common one you hear right now for that. Then you're stuck because you don't know where to go. Do you be true, or do you change just so you can sell a book? And then it strips you of that voice and of that character. And a lot of us fall into that category.
Okay, let me see if I've got this right, because this sounds super interesting to me. And this is exactly what I've been talking about with people. And for some people, it's hard to understand. So what I think I'm hearing is that you've had an experience where you're writing from your own knowing within your community, and that when you take it to an editor within the, let's say, the dominant children's book industry, that they're challenging you to change it because the voice sounds too old for what they consider to be an appropriate age voice. For, was it a 9-year-old, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that your thing is, so we find ourselves in these positions that if we want to engage and have these bigger conversations with our communities through books being published, through sort of traditional routes, that we have to constantly modify ourselves in order to fit into what they're saying they'll publish. And that if we change to a certain degree, then we basically lose our original voice and the meaning, essentially, of the story to begin with. Is it something along those lines?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is correct.
Great. I think this is a really, really, this is so important to bring out. And this is part of what I want to kind of like explore with people, is this idea of okay, so let me, and just talk with me, and let's see if we can go into a similar direction. So in my imagination, basically children's book industry is really focused on money. They have almost like algorithms, things that they say, if you sell this many books, then we will continue publishing your books. But if you don't, then we're going to take your book out of print. And what that does is it really hones the whole industry into this very homogenized package. And what happens naturally is that because there's so many power dynamics in our country around suppressing certain voices, is that the only books that get published are this very safe Western culture, is how I tend to perceive it, perspective. And it's very monoculture. And it was funny, when I was thinking about this talk tonight, all of publishing is focused on money. It's a struggling industry. Exactly. And I think that when we think of children's books, we need to kind of pull back and have a bigger conversation. It's just like, okay, so if the industry is focused on money, and creating, I like to think of it as almost like the lowest common denominator and how much they can sell. What are we teaching our children, right? What is this compulsion in our hearts to create children's books with meaning? And then we go to the industry that we think is going to basically serve us and serve our children, and we're constantly shut out. And I think it's really important to notice who's being shut out and why. And I think I'm having those conversations with myself and with everybody I can about looking at what we're doing and kind of what's not working, essentially, and how do we dissect that. I'm always into sort of dismantling this piece. And I'm super opinionated about it, but I'm also really curious to hear what other people have to say. And I have no idea why my thing is going through all of the slides. Shoot. Okay, well, let's go back. Oh, that's me. Oh, okay, good. You guys are doing that? All right. Let me see. I think I have to do something. Does that do it? Oh, stop. Oh, me and technology. All right, so if it's okay with you guys, I think let's go and look through, thanks Laura, let's look at a little bit of, I was sort of looking around at what I've been seeing for the last 18 years and what people are doing. And then kind of go and paying attention to what that's meaning. So a lot of times I'm noticing that there are these different ways that people are addressing, bringing more awareness to multicultural lit. One is, oh wait, I think I need to go back again. Yeah, all right. So one is very much taking the marketing route, right? So we look and it's like, oh, children's book industry is really about money. So how do we basically engage with that same kind of world, right? Marketing route. So if we publicize and make a point of buying the books that are currently on the market, buying about people of color and LGBTQI, will create a demand. So that whole demand and supply thing. The next one is the economic route, and that's about providing scholarships to people of color and LGBTQI. I don't know what the circumstances are around disabled people and other communities that are disenfranchised within the children's book industry. I was hoping that my friend Corey Silverberg would be involved with us tonight, but he's actually testing out his children's book with some people, so he didn't get to join us, but he often speaks to that for me. And teaches me. So creating scholarships, but then again, it's basically educating people to participate in the traditional system as it stands. So I think it's important to notice that. Jackie, children, blacks, white, Hispanics, Asians should be exposed to each other's cultures. We need to be tolerant and teach our children acceptance, and we can use books to close the gaps in open conversation. You know, maybe we should sometimes have one of these to just really call out how important multicultural children's books are. I really can't say enough about how important they are. And most of that comes from my own experience growing up as well as working in the classroom. It's just profound how important these books are. And which is why I want to talk about how we create change that's really going to be real. So there's the role model thing, you know, the whole thing about, you know, Pura Belpré and creating different kinds of the Coretta Scott, all these fabulous awards, drawing attention to people's works. That's one thing people have done. The social currency where people, even this week, there were some really fantastic articles that I was reading and sharing and having conversations about. I think that really kind of gets things moving, so we're bringing it into people's awareness. There's the higher ed route, which I really, really love. I work with two, actually, professors working with teachers, young teachers, student teachers who are just getting started, and really infusing in them this idea of how important multicultural children's lit is. And then, of course, there's the teachers. And then there are those people who really go out and create their own presses. What I'm noticing about all of these things is that they're all really remaining within the system that is here. I love all of these, and I think they're all really important. But I have to say, you know, 18 years in the biz, as they say, and this statistic that we're looking at, that Lee and Lowe put up, it really accentuates how many books are being produced and how many books are being produced by and for and about people of color. And like I said, I couldn't even find statistics for LGBTQI. So there's this freeze that's happening. So all this great stuff is going on, right? And yet we're really not making an impact. And I was like, what is that? So I just want to call out really quick. This is where I'm gathering a lot of the statistics. I like to do my own math. I really appreciate and respect people like organizations like Lee and Lowe putting stuff out, but I like to go through and see for myself. And it's absolutely staggering. So all this is going on. All of this is being done. It can be really overwhelming and confusing to understand what's missing. And this is the conversation that I'm really hoping we get to have tonight. Like really exploring what's missing. I, of course, have my own ideas and perspectives, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can talk about those, but then also to hear what you guys have to say as well. So for me, what I often find is, like I was calling out before, is that the industry basically remains a Western established style, inside and out. It's focused on the physical plane. It's focused on money. It's focused on, you know, basically promoting a very limited Western perspective. And that often is very white, very, very, very white, in fact, predominantly straight, able-bodied, well, did I say heterosexual? I think very straight, white, able-bodied, middle class is like this whole outfit. And a lot of people, including girls, get left out of that. And so for me, being part of that, I've published a lot of books through quote-unquote the traditional children's book system. For me, what I keep hearing is that there isn't a real feeling of inclusion. That there's this thing like you were saying, Jackie, well, if we modify ourselves enough, then we can be kind of part of the club almost. Then we can have access to having this bigger conversation by having our books out in the world. And I think that really walking around and understanding what inclusion means, what it feels like, what it looks like, and exploring like where those things are occurring and where they may not be occurring. And not just for like sort of like the children's book industry, but also for ourselves. Like really opening up to some different ways of thinking and moving in the world with our children's books. So I just got done. Oh, sexism is another thing. Female characters in books are only restricted to certain interests and activities. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Annie. It's almost amazing that we are still having to acknowledge that that's still true. So that's a really great starting point. So I've been blabbing like crazy, and I'm really curious if anyone else would like to share. Please feel free to raise your hand. Always feel free to raise your hand at any point, actually. Jackie, today I suggested to Layla Manigan that we should start an award for this area. She asked about how do we go about starting an award, how do we do it? That's a really good question. I'm actually not sure. You know what, my first thought is I would probably call someplace that actually has an award and say, you know, this is such a great idea. We want to do this as well. Yeah. I think that bringing attention in all the ways that we can are great. I just want to check again. Is anyone raising their hand? I think you guys go to the top when you raise your hand. Okay, not yet. All right, well then I'm going to keep blabbing for a moment. And just kind of open up to this idea. I'm just going to kind of go down this list of ideas that I have around what an appropriate ally feels like. And I wanted to bring this up. I think starting with scholarships is a good way to promote diversity in young writers. Yeah, I agree, Lori. I think all the ideas of getting things, okay, well, so this is really great. So, a diversity award, I think. So let's talk about a diversity award. So a lot of times, sexism in this. A lot of times, scholarships will be basically, so let's just say myself, as a queer person of color, and, oh, can you hear that? I live in San Francisco, you can tell. There's a lot going on here. Pause for a moment while it goes by. So a lot of times, what happens is scholarships are created, and yet that feeling of inclusion is not always present. It's kind of more like, oh, you know, you can come to the big table and eat with the grown-ups, but you have to follow all the rules that are already here. That it's not really the concept of allowing full participation and how to affect things as well, and possibly even change things. What are your thoughts? I just want to see really quick. Oh, sexism is at female characters. What are your thoughts? Check with organizations that deal with that specific interest, and also check with ALA about awards. That's a good idea. I think it is very good to have awards within specific groups. A lot of times, organizations themselves will have awards. So I certainly don't want to drag the conversation where we don't want to go. EY. Thank you. Okay. Oh, wait. I don't want to raise my hand. Oh, I want to catch all the notes. Let me see here. But I've been working in inner city and other culture schools all my life, over 40 years, but I'm white. I feel the other cultures, but don't feel I should write about or draw them, though I have lots of ideas. It's a problem with our society and whole. We have a very exclusive climate in this country. It's so important to start with kids when they are open. Okay, fabulous. You guys rock. Yeah, okay. So this is a really good way to bring it in, appropriate ally. So there's two pieces here. My first thought, I was going straight for, like, you know, what we're teaching and how we're including our communities to participate without always changing the structure. I've posted some things by, what's her name, Zetta Elliott, and she writes about how there's not a market for that. You know, that we write our stories, but then we're told basically the door is closed. So there's that piece. But let's go towards this, having writers and artists actually be inclusive and be an appropriate ally. Because I think this is a really, really immediate and important piece to include. Because the reality is that it is really important. I'm a huge proponent of first voice and really writing from our own experience. But I think it's very important that as white artists and authors, that there's also taking the responsibility of creating inclusion in our imagery as well. I also write outside. Okay, let me catch up on the notes here. I wish it was so easy for everyone to talk at the same time. So Priya says, depends on your research and connection. Lisa says, I also write outside of my race. I struggle with being accepted, but I write the books for students. The books they want to read are not written. That's right. Annie says, I think research can be done into other cultures if you don't belong to them. Sherilyn, I have the same experience as Judith and wonder the same thing, but don't feel that I should write outside of my race. Jackie, I agree, Lisa Rose. What's that? That's all right, outside of my race. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So I think there is something about being an appropriate ally, and I think that there's an interesting thing to walk around here. So let's keep walking and see where we land, because I think that it is really important for, you don't have to do it. Oh, there's so much more. Research alone will not be enough. Ideally, people coming from different cultures should get into this industry to represent themselves. Well, I think the thing is that it's sort of like two pieces. That it is really about having appropriate allies and allies modeling inclusion, which I think makes a huge difference, as well as people basically be first voice, which is what I do. And it is, Jackie, and this is the thing, it is really hard to get in some ways. And I think when we go back to seeing this slide, this one, where did it go? We really can understand sort of like that something's not working. It's hard to get in no matter what race you are. Well, and that's an interesting point too, is really just like a lot of what I like to focus on is really moving into those places that aren't getting published right now, because I feel like that is really what we need. And it's not just about having multicultural books with children of color. It's also about, you know, emotions and different layers of reality, bringing in more of our experience, our intuition. You know, a lot of stuff gets written out of books. You guys have so much awesome stuff. Nancy says, I think that awards are part of the problem. I believe that we should be putting out literary power lists that include a full range of diversity, including poverty. Very good. Good for this. We need to remove these awards that, again, cause segregation and allow the big awards to stay white. We should endorse powerful age grade level lists that identify and assist teachers on how to teach our books to all children in the classroom. Oh, God, I wish we were all in the room together, because this conversation is so fascinating to me. Laura says, I think one issue is that as long as those working in publishing are not diverse, it will be harder to get different perspectives published. Now, I have to say my perspective is, in some ways, I think I'm a little bit of the Audre Lorde sort of thing. And I work within the system and outside of the system. I have my own radical publishing house of my own. Is can we dismantle, quote unquote, the master's house with the master's tools? Or do we need to actually start rethinking some of the ways that we write, some of the ways that we get ourselves out, and even some of the ways that we share our work? Priya writes, if you have a co-writer, you can expand to other cultures and races. Interesting, Priya. And Nanette, when I wrote my book, Erin, I wrote with a particular child in mind, and she didn't turn out to be Filipino like me. The book was published. When I submitted a manuscript that was more Filipino, I got rejection letters. Maybe it's timing, but most of them said it didn't fit their needs. Yeah. Well, I think what's ironic is books that are about LGBTQI, about gender, and about ethnicity and multiculturalism are perceived as niche markets, when the reality is that all of us are being affected. And I think we need to really change some thinking. And I think we need to also change sort of like, I feel like we keep knocking at so many of us keep knocking at the door, and the door may not open. And the only way it may open is like when that economic thing kind of falls into place. And then we'll be within that same structure of being caught in this economic circle around children's books. I mean, I have to wonder, you know, do we need to kind of move out of that place and start exploring other forms of getting children's books out in the world? I think that in my imagination, to be perfectly honest, I think we should be creating as many children's books as possible and almost like flooding the world with our books and teaching our children to make books so that we can kind of bring this out of a monetary system and make it almost into a folk system, one of the people, so that we can have stories that reflect us. Lori, niche publishers like Lee and Low may be the place to start. If they build an audience, the larger pubs will take notice. You know, Lori, and Lee and Low is growing. I just finished doing a book for them. But I keep going back to those 18 years and be like, you know, Lee and Low has been working for a very long time. Children's Book Press, which they not too long ago acquired, had also been working for a long time. So I think it's good to pay attention to, I guess, kind of that really, really bigger picture. The other thing, I just am kind of going to keep saying things here and there and then go back and forth with you guys talking, is this idea of mentorship of skill within our community. Annie said, oh, you know what? Am I saying? Oh, yeah, Annie. They even have a quota for the kinds of books they publish. YA, CB, MG. Yeah. Where do you find a mentor? Well, ironically, Priya, I think that it's really important to start having people like me, other artists, authors within our communities, having classes and really sharing everything we know. My next course, the heart of it, creating children's books with meaning, is really about basically telling everything I know about how to make books. And what happens is it's not only how to make books on the physical plane, but also how to make books on the inside plane. On if we're having things inside of us because of that bigger picture, because obviously the children's book industry is reflective of a larger dynamic that's happening in the world, also affecting us in these different ways. If we can make creating children's books part of our own, basically, empowerment and spiritual healing, then we're automatically creating some different thing in the world. And I think that's what I want to impart through mentorship. It's just like, this is how you create art. But more than that, this is how you create an open heart that can allow your books to get out into the world. And if the systems that exist don't support that, then how do we create systems that do support the heart? Because basically right now, I think a lot of times we're looking, if we want to make children's books, we're looking at really having to focus on dollar signs and what is going to sell if we want to get published in traditional form. Not across the board by any means, but even if that's not at the front of your mind, it's going to be in the conversation and it's going to be really important. I think as long as we have children's books that are dependent on dollar signs, that we're going to have children's books that aren't necessarily promoting the kinds of values and spirit that we want for our children and that we want for the future, you know. So, me and my blabbing, is there anyone who would like to raise their hand, anyone that would like to talk? I love to let people talk. No? Thanks. All right. Well, I'm going to keep blabbing for a little bit more then. Again, raise your hand, feel free. You can have lots of different ideas than me. I'm interested in thinking more about alternative models. Yeah, you know, Laura, I was just talking to Harriet Romer. She was the founder of Children's Book Press, which is actually how I know Laura from a million years ago. And we were talking about sort of like the origins of Children's Book Press and how that developed, you know, it goes like 40 years ago now, and talking about where we could see things going. There's a lot of different possibilities opening up. Matthew and I like to talk a lot about opening up these different ways of self-publishing yourself, and then that self-publishing, that's right, Priya. In the course, I'm going to talk to some people, and again, I wish he could have been here tonight, like Corey Silverberg, Inosanta Nagara, didn't Beatrice Potter also start that way? Oh, maybe she did. So that would be kind of interesting to look up. Oh, you guys are talking. What is the plan of action? What role do we play? I think the industry is going to a shift, and this is the time. I agree. I have this conversation with my writer friends all the time, looking for new models. She did. Yes, she did. Yes, she made little books of her illustrations and stories. That's awesome. I have these conversations a lot too, and what was interesting is we have access to all of this amazing technology right now, and I know a lot of people who are getting absolutely gorgeous books created of their own. Some of them are choosing to go, ultimately once the book is made, to a more traditional publisher model. And some are remaining self-published and finding these other ways. Harriet, of course, in her constant visionary brilliance, was like, it's all about distribution. And I was like, that's it. I want to support people making these amazing books and really bringing out the stuff that isn't being published. But we need to find that gifted person who understands distribution, right? I think that's fascinating. Priya says people wanted to buy it, and then a publication house wanted to publish it in book format. What counts if customers like it and buy it, right? Yep. I know 2 authors who got rich by self-publishing. Oh, fantastic. Distribution is the key. Marketing is key as well. Marketing is key in a lot of ways. In some ways, like, I often try to stretch outside of models. So, like, when we do business, we try to not think of marketing. We try to think of sharing. We try to think of community. And I think for myself, stepping out of this sort of like dollar sign concepts and stories really helps me be able to keep the heart and spirit going with children's books the way I like. And my hope is, I think, so if anybody knows of brilliant distribution people and marketer types who have, and they're starting to grow now, who have spirit and who have a focus for children, I think this is definitely the way. Laura, I agree. It seems to work at Children's Book Press for a long time, not being so market-driven. Yeah. I think there's something that happens when you're very, what is that? Ideal, value-driven? Is that it? Value-driven. And I think those models that rise from that place, I think, are very interesting. Priya says, many famous authors started out self-publishing their works, including John Grisham, Jack Canfield, Beatrice Potter, and Tom Clancy. And this is what a lot of people are doing, and maybe this is part of this transition time, is there's a lot of this crowd funding going on now. And people are creating their books, beautiful books, intact, and then being able to be like, oh, look, you know, here's a market, and publishers are being able to say, okay. The really great thing, too, is that then artists and authors are able to have a lot of control over what they're creating, so that then when they go to a publisher, it's already a complete package, and they're just like, okay, then I'll take that. So that, I think there's a lot of different like pathways. I think it's important, Priya. It's not like likely you'll join the ranks of famous writers if you get published by a traditional house either. So I guess everybody's in the same boat. I was talking to somebody recently, and it was so interesting. He was with a very small press, and he is very happy, Radical Press. And he said, you know, there's always that fantasy that some big press will pick you up and you'll become, you know, like a famous children's book author. And he said, but he's like, you know, where things are now, he's like, I would really rather go with the small press and kind of hone my voice and understand my audience and really do what's important to me without the burden of the dollar signs. And then if that happens by accident over time, then great. And so it was interesting from him hearing like what was valuable to him to begin with was really establishing his voice. And Jackie, like what you were saying, is so often when we do go to that, you know, publishing house door, the answer is, you know, well, how much can you change yourself in order to be admitted in, really? Okay, again, is there anybody else that would like to? Francis says, there's something called Publish, crowdsourcing for books. Don't know what it's about exactly, but it may be an alternative. Publish.com. There was another one that I recently came into contact with, and I don't know anything about it, and I think it was called Inkshare. But what was interesting with Inkshare, and I wanted to look at it a little closer, is that they actually are a publishing house. So they give you this crowdfunding platform, and then you basically, from what I understand, pay them to publish you. So it's like this cyclical system, which I thought was kind of brilliant. But, you know, on closer look, and everyone was white, and they only had one woman on there. And I was just like, oh, wouldn't this be amazing if this was all like first voice work, or, you know, maybe there will be ones that are like this, that are like, you know, for disabled books, children that are disabled and working with disability, and all of the children's books there, ones that are LGBTQI, or my big fantasy is that there's one that basically covers, you know, all of this that we're dying to have and becomes just like a new style. All right, one more time. Any hands? No, not yet. I'm really glad there's this little typing thing to the side so that I can catch what you guys are thinking more immediately. This conversation, I think, could go on and on and on because it's really, I think it's really up right now for one. Okay, so here's another one. Excellent. Thanks, you guys. Books that were self-published. Oh, that's fun. Made money. Yeah, I think it's really valuable. I think in the past, so often self-publishing was seen as vanity books, and I think that it's different now. It's becoming, I think, more legit. Lori Edwards says, in PubFlush, you get people to fund your book, and you use the money to pay for publishing. And the publishing, so it's independent of PubFlush. Yeah, I see. I think, and I could be wrong, I think Inkshare is actually in-house, is my understanding, which again would be a really interesting model if it was actually inclusive. Oh, all right. Last call before I start blabbing on further. Any hands? Right. Okay, so I think it's this inside-outside kind of conversation. You know, I'm hearing the self-publishing thing. I have 3 or 4 books that I've published myself, and I'm still also simultaneously working in traditional publishing as well. I don't know if you know, the most radical, best, effective way to impact this 18-year freeze, or has it always been a freeze? I think it's always been a freeze. We just started noticing it for the last 18 years. Is within the system or without the system? You know, I think within the system there are ways to permeate. It's definitely really important. I feel it's really valuable because my focus is on education. I'm using children's books as a way to basically access children and support them in all the ways that I can. So in traditional publishing, I've been in the classroom. I think it's super, super important to have curriculum. I can't remember who was talking about it, but something about how to teach our books in the classroom. I developed a lot of curriculums basically because it was so important to me how I wanted my books told in the classroom, because I knew the kids, because I was that kid. So that's the kind of more traditional piece that I do. And then also really opening up to what these other possibilities are. So understanding how to publish books myself, and then really pull off the books that aren't going to be picked up by traditional publishers. And creating almost like a tension between those two worlds and create change in as many ways as possible. But what I have to say, and people who know me always know I drag this in, is did you say you have a publishing house? I work with Children's Book Press, and they ate up Lee and Low. No, Lee and Low ate up Children's Book Press. So now I have a book with Lee and Low, but I'm not wed to them. And I have my own press that I, at the moment, am only publishing my own work. And then for the course, for the part of it course, we're actually going to publish our first children's book that's going to be full color, a small paperback that will be people that submit from the course. That we're then, so this is, okay. So this is actually a really good point. So part of what I see is this idea of mentorship. So I think I'm really intent on uncovering the exact process of how you create children's books, of everything I've done to create my children's books, from, like I said, a physical, but also from a queer Chicana place, to really share like what it's been like to be like, you know, do I get to have a voice? Am I allowed to be somebody who gets to be published in this world? Do my books belong in schools? Like, who am I to share this work? Like really doing that inside-outside piece. But then also, as a model, like creating a sample of everyone who takes the course, this one course, and sending it out to different publishing houses, you know, all of the multicultural ones, and sending it out to kids, you know, and just being like, hey, let's start sharing this stuff now. Let's highlight ourselves. let's pay attention to the stories that are valuable and the ways that we want to get out in the world, and start creating a new path now. I'm 18 years. I've been doing this, and it's just like, I think we need more of us out there doing it. I want to hear those stories. I know how important those stories are. You know, I've been in the classroom with those kids who don't even know what to say sometimes when they see someone who looks just like themselves in a book for the first time. It does something very deep to us. So I basically want to take action now. We've had 18 years of scholarships and awards and articles and statistics, and it's like, yeah, I I want these things to start being in the hands of children. Okay, Lori says, but also as a white person, I think the truer a writer is to their own experience, the voice will touch a universal experience. Oh God, I'm glad you brought that up, Lori. I think of Sherman Alexie or Jacqueline Woodson. Their books touch me, even though I have not had their experiences. Hey, Cynthia, I didn't even know you were here. Hi. You're ready. Yeah, I think that there is something about, I think that there's a walk. I think there's a walk that we have to go through, and I think it's very important to take those steps, but it doesn't mean we can't be in a lot of places at once. I think we really need to acknowledge sort of our country's history and sort of the impact, the very real impact institutionalized racism has had on our children's book industry, basically, and what that's teaching our kids and how we can take that apart, and really giving first voice, really allowing, you know, communities to speak for themselves. But I think that it's true that the deeper we go into that, what we're going to find, and I have a couple of examples, great examples in my course that are just so moving, is that when we get down to that very, very deep level, there are no separations. You know, we are one. Tu eres mi otro yo. I always love that. You are my other me. It's a translation from a poem, a Mesoamerican tale that goes back. And it's just like that. I always hold that in my mind. You are my other me. And so how do we allow inclusion that provides the celebration of difference as well as understanding that oneness? And how do we create structures that aren't so focused on the dollar, that are focused on that, are focused on what we really want to teach our children? Yeah, I'm so excited about the course. It's definitely a backdrop to this conversation. This conversation I was hoping was a way for us as community to start kind of like sharing our thoughts and talking, because it's a huge conversation. We can only touch on it, you know, in this little hour. In fact, in a lifetime, I think it's going to take more than that. But it's worth it. And Jackie, how much is that course? I think we're still on, I'm terrible with this part, I think we're still on the early bird, not the super duper early bird, but the early bird. So I think the basic is $250, and it's 6 weeks, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time, because I think it's going to be way too much information. Oh, look at you, Priya. My God, thank you. We have to start somewhere, right? That's right, Monette. We have to start. And I think that that's a really good point, too, Monette, is we have to start somewhere. And Matthew and I always say it's an act of love. It's not about the money. It's really an act of love. And how do we really prioritize love when we're thinking about our children and what we want for them? And I think that that is what drives so many of us to have stories that we want to impart to our children, not just our own children, but to a lot of kids that we've learned or that sustained us, or is just basically our wisdom or our joy to share. So dollar signs kind of mess that sort of thing up sometimes, you know, and yet we have to support ourselves. And so how do we begin exploring these different ways to do this kind of work and have it really be an integral part of our life, and how it can convey more of us and more of our life? And my whole thing always is not just what's in the book that can heal and transform us, but it's also how we create the book. that we can take that opportunity to really go into our own heart and allow that to be part of the path. So, all right. Well, we're getting closer to the end. Create from the inside out. Exactly, Priya. Is there anyone that would like to share? I want to make sure that people have. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Jackie, yes, but in the 1980s, oh, the 80s, when the Cosby came, oh, remember those days? On TV. That year, African American enrollment college increase. Is that right? Holy smokes. That's amazing. And that's what I'm talking about. I noted that the Cosby was influential. And this is a conversation that I'm not really going into. That's amazing. I've spent, I want to see exactly what you ended up saying, because they saw blacks with degrees. I have spent the last 18 years talking about how important it is to see ourselves reflected in our media. That told blacks, that told them that they too can do it. Absolutely. That's a fantastic stat. I might actually have to snag that one. So for books, children can aspire to be great. Yeah. I have a big smile on my face. When they can see that they're the star of their destiny. And Victoria says, as an educator, I feel the necessity to create connection, build community, and most build a sense of belonging. I'm ready to create. That on, Victoria. Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm amazed I haven't puddled up or anything during this, because I think the truth of the matter is that this has touched me. One of the things that has touched me so much in life is being in the classroom and being faced with myself, really, and seeing kids of color feeling disenfranchised, not feeling reflected, having really, really limited possibilities, like you're saying, Jackie, of what was available to them, not seeing that anything was possible. And then once they begin seeing, to see that light go on, to see that transformation, to see little girls and little Chicana girls like me be like, oh my God, saying you look exactly like me. I want to grow up to be you. I want to grow up to be an artist. I'm going to make books. I'm going to tell stories. That's the thing that moves me like nothing else. It's just right on. When I was a child, I did not have that reflection. And as I have gone in and grown into children's book making over the years, over many books, I've deepened into a voice that was not allowed when I was young. It was not permissible. And I want it to be seen, that we have voice. And it changes things. It's very, very important. All right, we have moments left, darlings. Is there anyone that would like to raise a hand or share something in the writing that then I can share? Please feel free. I have greatly appreciated everyone coming and hanging out. Whether you share it or not, your presence makes a lot of energy here. I really, really hope that we can have more conversations, and I'm looking forward. Yay! My pleasure. Yay! That's so funny. You guys are all saying thanks. I'm all feeling thankful for you. It's very, very, yay! Yay! I'm super happy that you guys joined me and joined each other and joined yourselves. And we'll have more of these conversations. I have a couple ideas, and been doing so much lately. I get all excited and I want to do more than I can actually pull off. But these conversations in particular, I think, are really valuable to continue having. There's change in the air, like somebody was saying, things are definitely starting to move, and we just need to ride that pony all the way through. Yay! Yes, time and knowledge. I think I'm calling out all other queer people of color, anyone who's in a disenfranchised community that has successfully published and gotten their artist writer thing out in the world, to really share what they know, really share everything you know with everyone in your community, so that we can start having more and more voices join us together. I think there's something about everyone's voice coming forward. Not everyone's going to make a children's book, but in my imagination, if creating children's books was something that we taught kids in school, and it was something that became more of a more of a people's piece, then I think that there's the possibility that we could really get stories that are genuine and can start transmitting what we want to share with our children and what we want the world to be like. Eric says, yes, as a QPOC, queer person of color, love to see more of ourselves represented in books and used in the classroom. Huge need for that, huge need. The one radical children's book that I published pretty soon off with my own press was Gender Now, really focusing on multiple expression of gender, bringing out the transgender experience, the gender fluid experience, and giving voice, because so much of that is the root of bullying in our schools. And creating books for little kids about this stuff, really going and sharing what's inclusive and love-based with the little kids, I think is a smart way to go. All right, again, huge thanks. Sending out lots of love and lots of exciting new thoughts, hopefully, about where things can go. And let's have a conversation some more sometime. Let's continue having this. I have another idea of a structure for one of these talks that I think would be really interesting to hear what you guys have to say. So a super good night to everyone, and big hug. Take good care. Yay. Thank you, guys. Friend you on Facebook. Definitely feel free to friend me on Facebook. And School of the Free Mind if you would like to know more about my work. And I also sometimes, always have free curriculum, bits and pieces of free curriculum on my reflectionspress.com. If you go there, you can find curriculum attached to some of my children's books. All right. Have a great night.